maybe, I mean, I can just type it out as well. So we are going to use four set of inputs basically. So when I say four set of inputs, we'll have a time step. We'll have so time step is something which I'll require as a part of my calculation. Then we'll have the time to maturity as well. We'll have the face value, or which we call as a par value. We'll have a par coupon slash the YTM also. And our idea is to calculate spot rates accordingly. Just all right. So maybe time to maturity TTM. Then we'll have the price, which we are. So this is our par coupon, or the par bond price as we call it. And we'll have the coupon.
Sir,
Yes,
could you zoom in two levels on the bottom right corner?
yes, yes. Yeah, is this okay?
Yes,
Yeah.
this is nice.
All right, all right. Uh, Now I'll use the same rates. So something which we have used in our earlier. So it was 6 months, 1 year, 1.5 year, 2 years. Maybe I can just add 2.5 and 3 for our calculations. So in our discussion, we had kept things up till 2 years. So let me add a couple of more points in ahead so that we know how to basically build the entire yield curve. And we'll be using par yields. So all the prices will be at 100. This is my TTM. And maybe I'll just color this to so that this is my input, or maybe I can color this entire. I've colored it yellow because by convention, yellow is an input in Excel. And we have taken rates as 3%, 4%, 5, 5.5. I just put a 6 and 6.5 for convenience. And our idea is to calculate spot. So this will be in green. So I wish to have this calculation done. Now let me just put time steps here. This is something which will help me step through the code. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So so you can imagine the three columns or the three rows which are in yellow. These are like my market inputs. Whereas for the model, I have added one more row at the top because that way actually looping through these time steps will become easy. So that's why I have added 1 through to 6 at the top. So that's something which we'll use. So as a part of our input, we'll actually have these 4 rows which can go as the input. So we'll have these individual reference steps which we are using 1 through to 6, and then the market specific data. And the thing in green is something which we will populate. So let's just highlight this. So this is something which has to be computed. I'll also save the file. So once everyone is done, let me know, then we'll save it. And if you're saving it, then save it as .xlsm because we are going to write a macro. Don't save it as .xlsx.
Sir, XLSM.
Yes.
Monkey.
So if I go to file and say save as, this will be 33rd March. So in the drop down, I'll just select it as the second one, Excel macro enabled one, and save. So once everyone is done with this much, let me know. Then we can start. So you guys generally use R and Python, is it? And anything else which you guys use for your other subjects?
So most of us do not use Python a lot.
Okay.
We just use Python as a tool. We do not use Python as a language.
Okay. Okay. And R programming is something which you use more often, is it?
So actually, we again most of us use R as a way to do stats. We
Okay.
are not very comfortable with, let's say, coding in R. So
Okay.
again, R is a tool, a stats tool for us. It's not really a
Understood.
language for us.
Understood. Understood. Okay. But those of you who are joining analytics teams, or maybe even as a part of maybe risk or modeling side of things, this programming thing is something which will come handy because hands-on skills are something which the industry demands. So I would suggest that and practice simple hands-on things so that you get comfortable with it. So once you join the job, it will be easy for you to transition in that role easily. So once everyone is here, let me know. Then we can open a new module and we can start work.
I think we can start after a minute.
Sure. So that way, VBA is also a very powerful coding language, I would say, because the thing is, firstly, it is inside Excel, and most of the things are still inside Excel. So many a times clients say that we want to remain on this platform. We don't want to go anywhere else. So that way, I mean, VBA comes very handy. Of course, for big data applications, VBA may not be good enough because Excel simply cannot handle big data. But otherwise, for non-big data type of applications, I think Excel does a decent enough job. All right. So now again, we create a new module, something like we had done earlier. So I think we had done that simple Fibonacci sequence. So similarly, we'll create a new module. So I go to developer, I go to Visual Basic, and just click this. So this will open up a blank window. So I think the blank window may not be visible, right? So I think I need to switch. So is the Excel window? I don't think the macro window is visible, right? Because in my screen sharing, it's not changing. So let me just switch. Okay, it's a separate window. So when I say module, uh, or I have to create a new module, I basically go to my file name. Below you have Microsoft Excel objects. So you can do a right click here, and in insert, you'll have an option for a module. So request you to click on this. So this will open up a blank window on the right. So once your modules are open, let me know, then we can define our user-defined function.
Done, sir.
Okay. So the
So sorry,
keyword
sir.
is function.
Could you again just
Yes.
so could you please repeat?
Yes.
So
So you want to
we
create a
opened
new
the
so that you must be seeing that gray colored window, right, on the right hand side. A
yes, sir. We
blank
can see the
gray.
gray color window.
Correct. Correct. So here, if you see Microsoft Excel objects, on this right click, After you do right click,
All
you'll
right.
say insert and then module.
All right. Thank you, sir.
And that way your module 1 will be created. So let's define our function. So this is actually a keyword function. So you'll see this will, so once I go to the next line, this should change color. So all of the Excel specific names, they automatically change color. So that is something which Excel handles. We can say zero rates or spot rates, whichever. And as an input, I have to pass an array of numbers, right? So I have my I have the 6 steps which I have written, 1 through to 6. Then I have the time to maturity. I have the bond price. I have the coupon rate. So these are the 4 rows and a few columns which have to go in as input. So let's see how to do that. So we'll do it by reference. So by reference is the default technique which you use for handling such kind of inputs. So we do a by ref. Let's call it as rates array as
Sir, I'm very sorry.
range.
So is there any way of zooming in on this?
Can I do a control plus?
Hello, sir. Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible. I'm just seeing if there is something to zoom. So if I go to view,
Maybe in view.
yeah, in view, it's not showing me option to zoom. Guys, anyone has any idea how do I zoom in inside a VBA window?
So maybe it's in view option.
Even the
I'm not entirely sure.
no, it's not
I'm
really.
googling it for it.
It's not showing anything.
It's a toolbar you might explore.
Some control plus mouse wheel.
Sorry, what should I
You
do?
can like. So somebody has mentioned control plus mouse scroll.
Okay,
You can
so
try that.
control plus and mouse scroll. The control plus doesn't work. Let's do a quick Google to see if that is done. So
Google showing
let
Alt
me
plus
also.
F11.
Sorry.
Alt plus F11.
Okay, Alt plus F11. Okay, let's try that. So for me, it's Alt function F11. Alt function. It has zoomed in my other Excel, but does it zoom in this thing? So Alt. It's zooming in the normal Excel. It's not zooming in here. I don't know why. So VBA window is remaining as it is. This is not increasing in size. What is this?
But it's fine, sir. I think we can continue. Not much an issue.
So
Next time
Sir, if you go
we'll
to
prepare how to
tools
zoom in.
and there are options,
Next time we'll.
and then you can go to editor format, and then you can
Okay.
change the size.
Oh, okay. All right, this is good. I did not know this. Nice. So maybe I can change it to 14 or something. Oh, good. Thank you very much. This is new. So tools options. So is this better now? Do you want me to
Yes,
zoom in
sir.
further?
Much better. Thank you so much.
Okay. All right. This is interesting. Nice. Probably we can make it 16 as well. Okay. So I have defined zero rates as my function name. So I've just given some name, and rates will be my input range which I'm passing. So range is also a data type. So why I require a data type? Because I'm passing in some input to my function. So that way I can just select those 4 rows and those many columns, and that will become as the input to my calculator. So my idea is to have one function which will calculate all the rates in one stroke, so that I have the entire input which is being consumed, and then I simply use it for my calculation. So that's why I have defined my inputs as a range, and I'll define a return type. So I may keep it as variant for now. So variant basically implies that I'm telling Excel to decide that that you fetch whatever is the correct data type to return and return me the output. I can define any specific outputs which I like. So I can define it as float or as integer, etc. But for now, let's keep it as variant. Variant is slightly flexible because that way we leave it to Excel to decide how exactly it wants to handle the returning data, and that way it will show the result in our calculator screen. So maybe let's leave it to variant for now. If it throws any error, we'll see what to do. Now this end function, if you see, has automatically come in. I have not input this. So once you enter the function, you complete this line and hit enter, it automatically creates this end function line. So so you require a function and end function. So the program knows that this is the starting point and this is the end point. So whatever you have to write in between. Now, as a first thing, let's define the dimensions for my array. So I'll show you how to write comments as well. So there is this single quote. So if you press single quote and if you write a comment, now I would like a comment as define array dimensions. If you see, this color has become green. It has become by default because any comment which you write in VBA that changes its color, that becomes green. So this line of code will not be executed. This is just for our reference. And you can write as many comments as you like. So that way you know exactly what is happening at which line. So well commented code is always useful because that way if someone else is going to handle the code later, or if this model has to be maintained by someone else, their life also becomes easy. Because it may so happen that you have developed the model and you move to a separate role, or maybe you switch companies. Then someone else who is going to manage this at a later point in time, they should not find it difficult. So that's why good commenting is required. Now let's define a couple of variables for counting the number of rows and columns. We want to keep it dynamic, right? Now at the moment I know that I have 6 columns or something, but I would like to keep it dynamic. So tomorrow if I have 10 columns as input, so right now I have 6 months up till 3 years. Now from tomorrow if I have 6 months up till 10 years, that should be dynamic enough. So that's why we'll keep the number of rows and columns to be dynamic. We are not going to hard code them. Rows, we know that they will always remain 4, but no harm in counting the number of rows. So we'll do dim, that is dimensionalize, n rows. So n rows is a variable name which I'm defining as integer. Now these have to be integer, right? Because I cannot have fractional number of rows and columns. Also, always try to keep your variable names which are close to what you're doing. So I can keep the variable name as XYZ as well, but XYZ will be confusing. Maybe in a couple of months' time, if I open the same file and try to understand what is happening, then I won't know what is XYZ. So that way, try to keep names which are very close to the context to what you're doing. So here is number of rows. You can also define the number of columns. Sorry. N columns as integer. I've defined my number of rows and number of columns as 2 variables. So n rows and n columns, something which I'll use in my calculation going ahead. Now I can actually count the number of rows and columns coming in. So I would like to populate these variables with some values which are dependent on my inputs. So I can use an Excel function here to do the simple counting of rows and the number of columns. So I can do n rows equal to, I have rates dot columns. This is rows, right? So rates dot rows. Similarly, I can do n columns equal to rates dot columns dot count. So that way, the drop down which you see, if you find the function which you're or find the property which you're working on, you can simply move your cursor there and hit tab so that it automatically populates. So just to show you how that is done. So I do a dot, I just write COL. So now I know I want to go to columns. So this drop down has automatically come in. So I use my arrow keys, I go to columns and I press tab. So this gets automatically populated. But I do the same thing for count as well. I know that this is the property name. So again, I just press tab. So try to reduce your typing as much as possible because that will avoid any kind of spelling mistakes. Because Excel will not understand the spelling mistake. It will think that it's some other variable which you have defined. So wherever possible, try to use autocomplete. Yes.
So both of my rates that I wrote and I press enter, then the R becomes capital. Will that cause any issues to me?
So this one, right?
Yes, sir. The R of the rates just auto capitalized. No, no, sir. The other one. Yes, one.
This
So
one.
this one auto capitalized.
Yes, yes, it will auto
Yes, sir.
capitalize. Yeah, that is actually an Excel property.
So for rates, not for rows.
Okay, so this R is becoming capitalized.
Yes, sir.
Then I think you must have defined rates as capital here. R capital.
Okay. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
That's fine, no problem. It's a variable name. So no issue at all. So variables can be defined in any way we like.
And so how do you do the same thing for the variables?
So which variables? Sorry.
Like n rows and columns.
So these are something which are Excel specific. So so these names, columns, count, etc. These are Excel specific or already defined names inside Excel. So I don't have to. So even if I don't know whether it's capital or small, I can simply use the drop down. So that way Excel will understand that I want to use this property of columns and count, and I can simply go and select that property. I don't have to remember whether it should be capital or whether it should be starting with a small c.
Not that, so like the auto populating thing for n rows which we have written.
Okay, so wait. So I write rates, I do a dot. After this, I know that I want to look at rows, right? So because I want to count the number of rows. So I generally start typing in the rows. So I start typing in RO, it understands that it's rows that, or it will show you everything which starts with RO. Then I can simply go along the list, I can select rows. And the capitalization of R, etc. gets taken care of. So I do rows, dot, and I know what to do with rows. I want to count the number of rows. So I can do a count as well.
So I was asking that n rows which we have defined as a variable,
Okay.
how to auto populate that? Like in Python, we have that function, right?
Correct. So here you can, I think that can be done as well. So I think if you do NR and if you do control space, it gets populated completely. So just type in maybe the first 2-3 words and press control and space.
Oh, thank you. That was what I was asking.
Okay. All right. So this will give me my number of rows and columns. So the actual count will go and sit here. Now let's define an array to handle this. So what I would do is I'll define a 2-dimensional array because I have rows and columns which are coming in. So let's see how to define the dimensions of one array which you'll be holding. So we have dim C as double. Now I want to keep this as a dynamic array. So why I say dynamic? Because my number of rows and columns can keep on changing. So accordingly, a dynamic array is something which will be very, very useful. So let's see how to do that. So I have initially just given a name C, something which I'll use going ahead. I can do a redimensionalize, redim. Again, it's a standard function inside Excel. See, 1 to n rows, comma, 1 to n columns. So that way, this is something which I can consume later on. So I've kept this array C to be the main array on which I'll be doing my calculation. And I've defined the dimensions and I've kept it dynamic. That is, I have n rows and n columns. So I have not hard coded anything here. So even if there are more number of columns, that's absolutely fine. They can be easily handled here. So that way my array C will automatically get resized depending on the way in which my inputs are flowing in. Everyone with me up till this point?
No, sir. What exactly is this? Oh, so the thing is, we are entering certain thing as into a variable C.
Mhm.
Okay, and double is basically, we know it will be a
It's a
decimal
data
value.
type. Correct,
Yes,
correct.
data type. Okay, but now in this redim, we are redimensionalizing it so that it fits into from one to row, but one to column. But how exactly is this working? I'm a little confused about that.
So we'll see how that works. So basically what we're doing right now is I have simply defined my array name here. So array C is something which I want to use later on. But here I want to keep it as a dynamic array. So that's why I have to do a redimensionalizing thing. So this is how you generally keep your arrays dynamic. You generally define your array name first and then you redimensionalize that. So once you
Okay,
redimensionalize
sir.
it, this becomes dynamic in nature. So
All
how
right.
that will work, etc., we'll see when we anyways do the step through of the code.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Now, generally, as a practice, what I prefer is whatever inputs are coming in, I move it inside a temporary array. So imagine I have my Excel here. So my Excel rows and columns are defined here. And this is my array C. So in between, I generally prefer an intermediate array to hold the data. Again, more of a personal choice. So I hold the incoming data inside this temporary array which I create, and from that temporary array, I move it into array C. So the idea is I want one layer between the input Excel and the array C which I'm using. I mean, thing which I use more of a safeguard, I would say. That way, I don't have to directly refer to my input rows and columns, but I have something in between, and then I consume it. So something which I do on most of my projects, more of a personal choice, I would say. I become more comfortable with that approach. So we can do that here as well. So that way we don't have to directly refer array C to our input Excel. So not much of a difference, but I feel it more comfortable to have one temporary array in between and then have this array C which we use. Because array C is something which I'm going to extensively use as a part of my calculation. So I just want to make sure that whatever things are coming inside it are correctly handled. So that's why one intermediate array I would define. So a temp array. You can imagine this is like a buffer array which I have created between the incoming Excel and the array C. So I have a dim C input as variant, and I can do a C input equal to rates dot values. Rates dot values. Okay. So all of the incoming data should go and sit inside C input. Now I would like to populate my array C from the C input. So this becomes that temporary variable which is holding whatever is coming in. Now from C input, I like to populate array C. So let's see how that is done. Now here I'll require looping. Now, so I'll require something to loop along the rows and something to loop along the columns. So I'll use a couple of for loops here. So I'll define two variables, I and j, and I'll use a for looping, which will allow me to loop through and populate that array. So maybe after this line, we can try and do a step through the code so that we know how exactly it works. So I'll define a couple of variables here. So dim I as integer, dim j as integer. So just two temporary variables. And now I would like to define a for loop to populate my array C, because at the moment my array C is empty. It's just an empty array for which the dimensions have been defined. It doesn't have anything right now. Now I will move the data from C input into C. I can do a for I equal to 1, 2, I'll go row wise, that's like a normal convention, n rows. And for j equal to 1, 2, n columns. Now again, this indentation is something which is not required in VBA, but I prefer indents because that makes your code very readable. So later on, if you have to debug or if someone has to read through the code, it becomes easy. So even if I just keep it this way in the same line, that's absolutely fine. VBA doesn't throw an error. So this is not like Python. Python requires indents automatically. But here that is not required. But even if you do introduce indents, VBA doesn't throw an error. So it's always good to have indents. It improves readability drastically. I can have a C of ij, sorry, round bracket, ij equal to C input of ij. And then I'll require a next j, I'll require a next I. So unlike Python, we don't have a ready next thing which happens. Here you have to explicitly define next. So maybe let's see if this is working fine. Now we can't use this directly. We'll need to define a sub procedure to call this. So let me, so I'll just scroll down a bit. Find sub procedure to test this thing. A sub test. Okay, now I define my M output.
So sorry to interrupt, sir.
as yeah.
How? Why is there a line in the middle of your? How did we get that line?
This
after
is
end function?
automatic. This automatically came in. The idea is I want to show you how to step through. So that's why now when I say step through, if I want to see actually what is happening at each of these points, so that way if I introduce a breakpoint here. So breakpoint is something which you can introduce by simply pressing the left key of your mouse on this gray arrow. So is everyone familiar with the idea of breakpoint and stepping through the code? And why do we require that?
Sir, not me, sir.
Okay. So the thing is why we have to step through the code, because that way we understand what the logic is. So right now we are building the logic as per our understanding. But maybe the way in which Excel might interpret this logic is different. Now we just need to confirm whether Excel is following the exact same steps that we have programmed or the way in which we have visualized. Now, if I directly execute this model, I will not understand how the logic flow is happening. That is, I don't know how exactly the variables are getting populated or updated. So for that, I require to do a step through. Now, this is technically also what you call as debugging. Debugging something. Debugging. So what we're going to do now is debug. So when I say debug, I can actually step through each of these lines of code so that I know exactly what variables are populated with. So that is something which I want to demonstrate here. Now for debugging, especially whenever you have a user-defined function, you cannot step through directly. It's not possible. So for that, I have created a test function here. And I'll just input my input array. So, or maybe as an input to this sub procedure, I'm going to send my input array. So I'll show you how to do that as well. So this is just for testing purposes. So I can just hard code numbers here. So I can hard code the range which I'm passing in, and then see how exactly my data is getting populated. So the main idea here is to see whether my function, whichever I've written up till now, is working as per my expectations. So that is the only thing which I want to do. So this is not our entire code. This is just a part of the code. We still have to write after this. So is the idea clear?
Yes, understanding.
Okay.
So basically, I just need to see what happens at the end so that I understand. Because I'm feeling very alienated from the end process right now.
Yeah, no problem. So that we'll see. Now, once we step through, you'll see how the variables are getting populated. So that will give more visibility. So I can define, so this temp output. Now this is equal to, so what's the name of my function? Zero rates. So it's fine even if you don't write the sub procedure right now. I'll just demonstrate it for testing purposes. Even if you don't write the sub procedure, that's absolutely okay. We anyways have to, we'll be anyways commenting this sub procedure out once we complete everything. This is just for my intermediate testing. I say zero rates. And here I'll send in a range. So what range? Let me just go to my Excel and see. So it starts from B1. So maybe I'll just pass the first 3 periods as the input. So 6 months, 1 year, 1.5 years. I just require it for testing, right? I don't need to pass the entire table. I can just pass a portion of that table. So I'll pass the first 4 rows, but I'll pass only 3 columns. I won't go up till year 6. I'll take only the first 3 periods. So I can take it from B1 up till D4. So range B1, D4. Okay. Now let's say I want to debug. Now you see there is a debug this thing here. So if I go to debug and I say step into. So here you see that this has got highlighted in yellow. So that means my program control is here. So let me just bring this window up a bit.
I'm so sorry, sir. I'm so sorry. I just lost. Yellow.
Yeah.
How?
So I introduce a breakpoint here. So breakpoint is basically simply clicking my mouse on this gray colored column.
Sir, and I got it.
So
Sir.
okay, and then I press debug. So either do debug or do function F8. So for those of you who don't use the function key, it's just F8. So for me, it's function F8. So that way, the whatever line is highlighted, that means my program control is there. Let me draw this up further because my variables will get populated here. I can see what those variables are. I can also hover over the variable. So we'll see that. So if I keep pressing F8, now this takes me to my main function. Now at the moment, everything is empty. I don't have anything which is populated because my program control has not reached all of these values yet. Again, if I keep pressing F8.
How did to interrupt, sir? Yeah, so
So
how did to interrupt?
again, I've set a breakpoint here as well. So I've set 2 breakpoints. One is at the function and one is at the sub procedure. So I simply take the left click of my mouse and I click it next to the sub test, and I take the left click and I click it next to this function underscore 0 rates, a function 0 rates. Sorry.
Sir, have you used a curly bracket in temp output?
No curly brackets, not at all.
All right.
All
So
are
because when I did the click and I did, so it's showing my temp output has entirely become red. So maybe I'm not.
Okay, so it's
I'm not.
basically, it must be some error. Yeah. So when it is in red,
Yes.
it will be something which is in error. So we don't need
Okay, sir.
curly brackets there.
So sir,
Just
I
cross
think it's fixed. I forgot to put the inverted
Okay, the double quotes, yeah. Okay. Because this is just a range which I'm passing as the input. So that's why it's looking this way. So again, we'll continue to step through. So let me just start function F8 once. Now, at the moment, if you see the n rows, which is here, it's showing as 0. Even if I hover here, it will show as 0. It's showing as 0 because I need to press F8 once again so that it calculates the number of rows. So again, now if I press F8, this should get updated. So now my number of rows have become 4 because my program controller has executed this line. It gets updated here as well. So my n rows has become 4 if you see. At the moment, n columns are 0 because the program controller has not executed this. Now this should become 3 because I've selected those many number of columns.
Sir, I'm really not catching on to the last thing that you're doing right now. I'm not understanding what is happening right now.
So at the moment, what I'm doing is I'm simply stepping through the lines of my code. My idea is to test whether my array C is getting populated correctly. That is all that I want to see. So I'm testing
Okay.
whether the input is coming in correctly. That's it.
All right, sir.
Yeah. We haven't done any calculation yet. We are just seeing if Excel has read the input correctly.
All
On the
right.
program. Yeah. So again, because if I simply run the function, I'll not understand what is happening. So that's why this step through is important. And again, this is not a very long code, but for longer models, you have to do debugging because maybe your model can be like 1,000 lines long. So that way, you will build it part by part. So every part which you build, you may want to debug and see whether that program flow is happening correctly. Because if something is wrong in part one, that will be translated to every other following part. So that way, after every functionality which you do, it's always good to debug to see if the program is interpreting the way exactly you want it to do. So that's why this step through gives us an idea whether it's happening as per our expectations. Again, now this will loop through 2-3 times. So if I just open this plus sign, if you see here at the bottom, I have this array C. So gradually this will start updating. So I just open this. So these numbers will happen. So basically this loop should happen 3 times. So that way, if you see these values are getting updated. So if I just scroll down. So if you see this C11, this is my time steps which I have written at the top. So if you recollect 1 through to 6 which you have written. So that is 1, 2, and 3 which we see here. Also, my time to maturities are 6 months, 1 year, 1.5 years. That is my row number 2. My row 3 is the par price, which is 100. And now the last row which has to be populated, which is my par coupons or YTM. So if I again press F8 3 times, this will get populated as well. So that way my input was 3%, 4%, and 5%. So my array C is getting populated correctly. So now I'm sure that I can work on array C because everything is working as per my expectations, and now I can proceed. So is this okay? So we have just verified that the array C is populating the data as per my expectations. That's all that I've tested. I've not done any kind of bootstrapping up till now. So any questions?
So can we just see how this pans out so that we understand the bigger picture before we zoom in?
Sorry. So basically, you're asking about the step through, is it? Or
No, sir. If we can just see what this does right now.
So at the moment, we don't really have an output as such because we are still at the intermediate point, right? And
All right.
we don't even have output ready. Now, this I've done just to test whether array C is working as I want it to. Now I have to do
Right.
something on bootstrapping. I haven't done any bootstrapping up till now. So proceeding. So everyone with me up till this point. So at the moment, we are yet to start bootstrapping. We have firstly handled all of the incoming information, and that is sitting inside array C. Now array C, you can imagine, is my main array which I'll be working on. Now all of my calculations can be based on array C now because I know for sure that array C is handling all of my incoming data, and I can use it in my calculations the way I like. So is the idea clear up till now? What you accomplished? Any questions?
Sir, how does that locals tab opening in the bottom?
So this automatically populates actually. So if it doesn't, or if this doesn't come out, I think you have a view window whereby you can have this locals window which can come in. So I think for me, I have set it as default. So this automatically populates, but I think it should automatically populate. I don't recollect I've done anything separately for this. If not, these can be formatted. So that way there are other windows as well. So inside view for formatting, do you have? So if you need to add more windows, I'm just checking if is there any other option, but I think it's just views. So if you so in views, you have various options. You have an immediate window, locals window, watch window, etc. So I think whichever one you click, it should open. For me, it has opened up by default. I have not done anything actually. If it doesn't populate, you can do it through view.
Okay, sir.
Okay, so the first input handling is done correctly. Now we can begin some work on bootstrapping. So I'll define a few variables which I want to use here. Something which I'll require as a part of my bootstrapping calculator. So this is the same bootstrapping algorithm which we have discussed earlier. So just defining a few. So maybe I can have a dim S1 as double. I'll need to keep these variables as double because my rates can be decimals, right? So that way to handle decimals, I require a floating point operator, and double is a floating point representation. So that's why I define S1 as double. Similarly, I can have a dim S2 as well as double. I'll be working on these coupon payments. So I'll have those individual coupons which we are using. So I think I haven't sent you the Excel as well. So that I'll send tonight. So we'll currently complete the code, but later on to have further clarity on the exact logic which you have followed, you can refer to that Excel which we have discussed in class. So my apologies, I think I missed sending it, but I'll do it tonight. But I'm doing the exact same logic which I have implemented there. I'm not doing anything else. So I'll define one more variable called as coupon so that I can handle the quantum of coupon payments as double. I think you can define these variables one after the other as well. So I think you can define dim S1, comma, S2, comma, coupon as double. So I think it works this way also. Even if you do this as double, it should be fine. Yeah. So that works as well. So you can either put commas and add more variables or simply add a new line. I generally prefer a new line because that way it helps me keep track of what variable names or how many variable names I have defined. So again, just a personal choice. You can have commas as well if you want to reduce your typing effort. Then I'll require a counter to move through each of these periods. So I'm basically trying to visualize what variables I'll require. So generally what we do is whenever we are trying to build a certain model, we generally have an idea as to what approach we want to use. So accordingly, we create a few variables, we start using them. Later on, if you feel that you need something more, you can always come back and add more variables. So generally, I'm trying to include variables which I feel I will require as a part of my calculation. I don't know for sure if that will be required, but that is what I'm visualizing. So I'm simply adding a few variables, few more variables. So coupon is one. I'll also require a counter because counter is something which will help me loop through. So counter as double. So now do I require anything else? Now I have to calculate the present values of my cash flows. Okay. So before we go ahead, does everyone recollect the logic which we have followed earlier? So does everyone recollect that Excel sheet which we had discussed? So how exactly we had calculated that spot rate at 1.5 and spot rate at 2. So do you visualize that that idea? So it will be easy for you to relate as to what we are doing.
So the 3-column one Excel sheet that we just did now.
No, so Excel which we have discussed a couple of, so we have discussed that spot rates and implied forwards when we spoke of fixed income. So at that time we had simply, so that at that time I had done a manual calculation for a 1.5 year and a 2 year rate. So does everyone recollect that discussion? Because that's exactly what I'm trying to do here. Or should we just do a quick walkthrough of that and then come back to the model?
So a quick walkthrough would be great if it's okay.
Sure. Okay, so let's do this. So we are at 10, 10, 13, 10, 15. So let's take a quick 5-minute break. I'll also get my whiteboard. I haven't really connected my whiteboard today. So let me connect that as well. So if I have to show something on the whiteboard, I can do that as well. And then we can quickly run through that Excel file which we have created. And then we'll come back to the model. So does that sound okay? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. So let's take a quick break for 5 minutes and we'll be back and then we'll proceed. But today we'll complete this model. It's not a very big model as such. We can definitely complete it in the remaining portion of the class. Can we resume, guys?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this was the Excel which we had discussed, or which we had done a walkthrough of. Hide these couple of columns. So this is precisely what we are trying to do. Now, this is hard coded. Now I've done this manual calculation for demonstration. So our idea is to have a function which will populate this row in one shot. So that way I can have that equal to whatever we have called it as zero rates. We don't have this zero rate function because this is a separate file. But when I write that zero rates and I call this function, so that way I'll select the entire range, I'll do equal to zero rates and pass in the inputs. So that should be able to calculate the zero rates in one shot. So that's the final aim which I'm trying to accomplish. So now we know that up till 1 year, we don't have to worry about spot rates, because up till 1 year, these are just deposit rates, and deposit rates can be directly equated as spot rates. That is the yields, coupon / YTM. Up till 1 year, whatever the yields are coming in, they are directly spot rates. So up till 1Y, nothing to be done. But after 1Y, I need to do bootstrapping. So this 5.03 and this question mark, which I have calculated as 5.5, that is something which has to be computed via bootstrapping. Anything beyond 1 year, you require the bootstrapping algorithm. Now, let's see how this 1.5-year rate is calculated. So that once we have clarity on this, we have to just repeat the process for all of the further tenors. So for this bond with a maturity of 1.5 year, we have the coupon of 5%. Now, generally the bond pays out semi-annual coupons. That's the most common frequency. So we'll follow the same idea. So 5%, and it's a semi-annual coupon paying bond. So I'll have a coupon of 2.5 units every 6 months. So that way I have firstly plotted this timeline: 6 months, 1 year, and 1.5 year. And I have plotted the cash flows. So 2.5, 2.5, and final 2.5 plus 100, which is my face value, which is nothing but the final payment which happens at maturity of the bond. So these are my three non-discounted cash flows: 2.5, 2.5, and 102.5. Next, I have simply linked these rates. So 3% is the same 3% here. 4% is the same spot rate 4% here. Now this is something which I'm trying to calculate. Now I don't have a ready answer for this. Now here I've done a formula. So our idea is to implement something like this in VBA. So is the idea clear?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So don't worry about the formula. It looks very messy, but it's not a very difficult formula. So if I had to simply show this on a plain whiteboard, I'll just simply show you what I'm trying to do without making any adjustments for semi-annual payments, etc. So if I'm interested in calculating Z 1.5 or spot rate for 1.5, I'm simply solving one equation. So I'll actually write P as 100. I just put some powers right now, that's fine. Now, this is the equation which I'm trying to solve. So I've written the same thing in Excel. Only thing is it's adjusted for semi-annual compounding, etc. So the formula looks messy, but otherwise it's not a difficult formula. Again, I'm simply using the bond pricing relationship, which we have discussed earlier. We have bond price, which is at 100. We have the cash flows, 2.5, 2.5, and 102.5. Then we have the first two spot rates. So 3% and 4% are known because these are my deposit rates. So I can directly equate them as zero rates. But Z 1.5, this is something which I'm trying to calculate. So I have one equation and I have one unknown. So I can have a unique value for Z 1.5. And this is precisely what I'm trying to solve. And once I get this, I get that Z 1.5 to be 5.03, as we have shown on the demonstration Excel. So once we get 5.03, that becomes the spot rate for 1.5 year. Then I repeat the same process for the 2 year as well. So for 2 years, it's something similar. So I think for my 2 year bond, the coupon is it's 5.5, so 2.75 units each. So now to calculate Z2, I repeat the same idea. So the coupon is 5.5, so semi-annually this becomes 2.75. So that's why I've written it directly here. Now I have a 5.03, which I've calculated right here, which is my spot rate for 1.5 year, plus the final cash flow. Again, if you see, there is a similarity between the way in which we have approached these things. Only thing is here we have one additional period because this is a 2 year bond. So again, bond price is at 100. The coupons or the cash flows are known. We know the first three spot rates. So 3 and 4% continue to be the same. 5.03 is what we have just derived for Z1.5. And then based on this, we calculate Z2. So that way you can imagine it's like a recursive procedure. We are trying to repeat the same thing for all of the future periods. And we are building on an entire curve. So we do it one period at a time and we have one entire spot rate curve which we get. So is this okay? Any questions in this? Once this is clear, then writing the model is not difficult. Then it's the syntax thing, etc. That's fine. That syntax you will anyways master. But is the logic completely clear?
Yes, so we're trying to find these rates, and once we find a certain rate, only then can we move on and find the next rate which gives us the
Absolutely.
same value of.
Yes.
Yes,
So it's
sir.
like a step through which we are doing. So it's one at a time.
Sir, I also have a basic question. So,
Mhm.
what does the spot rate of a bond represent?
So
Uh,
spot rate of a bond basically represents a rate for a zero coupon bond with a certain maturity. So that way, if I say Z 1.5 is 5.03%, that you can equate as a zero rate for the tenor of 1.5 years. So the advantage for that is if you have any cash flow which is coming at a 1.5 year point, you can simply use 5.03% as a discount factor and use it in your calculation.
so, how is it different from yield to maturity?
So, so spot rates are something which we derive from yield to maturity. So what we do is yield to maturity, you have to adjust for all of the compounding frequencies, etc. Now in spot rates, what we do is we account for all of those conventions and we calculate one single short rate. And that rate is what we call as a rate for a zero coupon cash flow, which is occurring at a 1.5 year point. Now, when I have a specific cash flow, which is occurring, so let's say I have something like CF of 1.5, and I want to calculate what is the PV of this cash flow. If I have access to Z 1.5, that I can use as a discount factor. So basically to calculate this thing, PV of cash flow. Now this PV term, I need a discount factor, right? So this discount factor can be something like e raised to minus Z 1.5 into T. So one function of zero rates is to have that equivalent uh, or equivalent spot rate for that tenor. So that way I can safely say that any cash flow which is occurring at a 1.5 year tenor, I can use a rate of 5.03 for discounting that cash flow to today. So that's purpose one. And
Okay, sir.
second purpose is to calculate implied forwards. So we had earlier written one simple relationship, 1 plus S2, and we had related that with 1 plus S1 and F11. So this is step 2. So this is something which we'll do in tomorrow's class. Now once we have the spot rates, so my S2 is the 2 year spot rate, S1 is the 1 year spot rate, and I'm trying to imply F11. So this is the second purpose where spot rate again gets used.
Okay, sir.
So at the moment, let's not worry about F11. Now this is easy. Now once we have the spot rates calculator, F11 is just a step ahead. It's that is something which you can do in no time once our spot rates calculator is ready. So can we go back to the model? Is it clear as to what we are trying to do? So I'll share the Excel with you later, so that way you can go through that in your time as well.
Yes, sir. We've understood what are the rates you're trying to find.
Okay, excellent. Yeah. So I'll switch screen. So at the moment, you may find this to be slightly tricky because you're working on such models for the first time. But gradually, you'll get used to it. It's not very difficult. It's honestly just converting our understanding into the way in which a machine will understand. That's all we are trying to do, nothing else. Okay, so continuing, I'm defining a few variables. So I'll define a coupon as well. So coupon is defined. Maybe I'll require something like a temporary coupon to handle those intermediate cash flows. So let me introduce a few more variables which I visualize may be required. So dim, maybe I can have a temp coupon, as maybe I can just have those commas now so that we can have a fewer lines of code. Generally, I don't prefer commas, but that's fine. I mean, syntactically, it's correct. We can have a DCF coupon, so discounted value of coupons, which I would like to hold. Anything else which I feel I may require? This is it. Then I'll require an output array as well, because now I'll have one single array which is going to calculate my spot rates, right? So when I select that cells in Excel and I say equal to 0 rates, and I have to pass an array, because the idea is I'll pass my first 4 rows and n number of columns as inputs, and in one shot I will get my spot rates. So for populating that spot rates, I'll create one array to hold that output. So I can say dim result as double, and I can do redim result. Again, this will be something which is dynamic. Redim result 1, 2. I just have one row, so I just define the number of columns here, because it's just a one-dimensional array which I'm trying to populate. So this can be my output array. Maybe I'll just introduce one more temporary variable. I think that may help me with looping, especially while adjusting the powers. So maybe dim k as integer. So I have a S1, S2 to hold my spot rates. Coupon is there. I have a counter and temp coupon, DCF coupons. Okay, then I have defined a result as well. Anything else which I visualize? So let's see. I think this looks fine up till now. Maybe along with temp coupon, one good idea could be to have a temp index as well. So that way, maybe if I have to do any temporary indexing, which I visualize. Again, guys, this is just one approach of doing things. Now, we'll write it this way. Now, later on, you can try some other ways as well. Now, I have one logic in mind which I'm trying to follow, but everyone can follow a different logic. That's absolutely okay. As long as you reach the end result, which is tallying, that's no one is going to worry about what approach you're using. So we are just studying one approach. There can definitely be another way, maybe even a more efficient way of doing things. So something which you can definitely check out later. Okay, I think these variables should be good for now. If we require something else, we'll see. But for now, I guess this should be fine. Okay, now we'll do our main calculation. So now for the first two periods, now I have 6 months and 1 year, right? Where is my Excel? Yeah. So 6 months and 1 year. So columns B and C. So here basically I don't need any bootstrapping, because up to 1 year I know I can directly equate them as spot rates. So we'll handle the first 2 periods separately, and then we'll handle the remaining periods. So that way, no bootstrapping to be done for the first 2 periods for 6 months and 1 year. But after 1 year, yes, we will require bootstrapping. So let's split the calculation that way. So I can have for j equal to 1 to number of columns. Okay. Now I can have a simple if condition, the condition statement. So let me see what row that is on. That's on row number 2. So if now I'll refer to my array C, which I have populated earlier. So if C, I know for sure that my row number is 2 when I'm looking at the tenors. So C2, comma, J, which is my respective column. If this is less than or equal to 1, then do something. And do something is simply populating the zero rates with this rate. No bootstrapping to be done at all. So I do a result of J equal to the yield, right? So that's on row number 4. So my yields are populating on row 4. So 0.03 and 0.04. So that way I have C4, comma, the column there. And I'll just increment my counter, something which I intend to use later on. Then I can have an end if as well. So again, end if is something which is required as a part of VBA. For Python, you don't do end ifs. The
Sir?
interpreter automatically
Excuse
takes
me,
it.
sir.
Yes.
Have you written counter :1 or +1?
+1.
All right. Thank you, sir.
So maybe I can slightly zoom in a bit more. So I'm simply incrementing the counter because I intend to use the counter for my future periods as well. Now actual bootstrapping will begin. Up till now, we didn't have to do bootstrapping because up till 1 year, I simply populate the rates. But beyond 1 year, I need to use that bootstrapping algorithm. So the equation which I've written on the whiteboard, that is something which I have to try and convert into a line of code which the machine will understand. So let's try to do that now. So my anything up to period of 1 year will be handled by my first if statement. Now let's have a second if statement which checks for anything which is beyond 1 year. So let's try that now. So if we have if C of second row and jth column, if this is greater than 1, then I think I may require temp index. So let's define temp index equal to 1 because I think for adjustment of that periods, this is something which will come handy. Again, I'll just increment this counter. Okay. Now let me calculate the quantum of my coupon. Now I know these are par coupon rates. So I have something like 5% which is given to me. But that 5% is a percentage number. So I want to convert that into a value because I can't simply use 5%, right? I want to calculate how much is the cash flow. So I have to calculate the equivalent cash flow. So 5% of 100. So that's basically 5 units divided by 2, which is 2.5. So imagine that I'm working on Z 1.5 right now, and I have that 2.5 cash flow which I have to calculate. So that actual quantum of 2.5, I'll calculate it here. So I have a coupon equal to, this is coming in 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay. So I have a C4, comma. I'll use my counter variable. Okay, so this will take 5%. I will divide it by 2 into, I have to multiply this by the face value, isn't it? Because I want the quantum of 2.5. That's why I have to multiply this by C. So that's row number 1, 2, and 3. My face value or the par coupon or the par price is appearing in the row 3. So I do a C3, comma, counter. So this should, now my coupon should hold 2.5, which I had written on the whiteboard. Okay, and
We
I
just
can,
take a 30-second pause so while you copy down.
yes, yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Sir, what is the counter variable representing?
So counter is basically helping me move through my columns. So that approach which I'm visualizing, I am having my row number for sure. I have my row numbers which are not going to change because I know the format of my inputs. But my columns are going to keep on fluctuating. So for that, I'm using a counter variable so that I can use that in my calculation. So that's just a temporary variable to allow me to move within my array. So I have to move to various columns. So for that, I intend to use the counter variable. So when you say something like this, C4 comma counter. So 4 is the row number and counter is the column number. Because C is a two-dimensional array, right? Something which we had declared earlier, 1 to n rows and 1 to n columns. Now to access individual items inside the array C, this is how I do it. I have to define an index for a row and I have to define an index for a column. So these are basically indices. So imagine something like a Cij, which I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to move within my elements of the array.
Okay, sir.
So once everyone reaches here, let me know. Then we can proceed. So as a part of your hands-on activities, have you guys worked with loops and condition statements, etc. in your, I think you have that separate subject for business analytics, right? So anything on those hands-on which was covered as well? Maybe
So could you
using
please
some,
repeat?
yeah.
Are
So
you
as a
asking
part,
if we use loops?
yes. So have you guys used looping condition statements in your other subject, that business analytics subject?
So we have used, I think, loops first in business analytics and in general, sir, if we want to do random sampling and we
Correct.
want to actually do it instead of just taking random numbers, we have used loops for that too.
Okay, okay. And I think you guys must have used probably some scripting tool, either a MATLAB or a Python or R.
Python and R, sir.
Okay, okay. So we are exactly doing the same thing here. Only thing is the syntax is different. That's it. The logic is absolutely the same. So don't worry about the syntax part. So syntax may appear new because you're using VBA coding for the first time, but syntax thing, anyways, you'll master over time. That's not difficult. Focus on the approach which we are trying to do. That's more important. So it's not required to memorize syntaxes because you always have a help or online help which is available. So in case you run into problems with syntax of a certain way in which you have to use a function, you can definitely go to user forums and check out the syntax. So I also do that often. It's impossible to remember syntax. It's not required as well. So wherever you get stuck, you can simply go to user forum, check out what is the correct syntax and just use it directly. So no need to memorize syntaxes. I mean, it's not required. Are we good to proceed?
Yes, so we can continue.
Okay. So now I'll do something to handle the face value as well. Up till now, I haven't really spoken about face values. We have taken the coupons, but maybe I'll introduce one more variable, say CF underscore face value. And so my face value is in row 1, 2, and 3, which is 100, right? So I have a C4 comma counter plus. So this becomes my final cash flow. So maybe I can call it as CF face value. So that's my final coupon plus the face value. Okay. So maybe the 102.5, that is something which we can handle via CF underscore face value. So we have 2.5, 2.5, and 102.5. So that 102.5 can be handled here. Okay. All right. I'll require one more loop now so that I can begin consuming this coupon and the CF underscore face value in my actual calculation. So I can have a for k equal to 1, 2. I have used the temp index somewhere, right? Yeah, it's here. So okay. So from there up to temp index. Okay. So counter minus temp index. Okay. I'll require a temporary coupon equal to. Now this is actually translating the formula on the whiteboard into Excel, into VBA. So I have the quantum of coupon, which is 2.5, which sits inside this variable coupon upon. I have 1 plus 3% and 1 plus 4%, which has to be done. So imagine that I'm trying to write 2.5 upon 1 plus 3%, and I'm just simply adjusting it for periodicity. So I have 1 plus, now my 3% is going and sitting inside the result array. So if you see, there is a result array here. This one, result of J. So this result of J is something which is holding my output. Now 3% and 4%, which are the first two zero rates, are already populated there. So I can call that and use it here. So I will use result of K. Again, I'll adjust it for 2 because it's semi-annual. Okay. Do I need one more bracket? No. Raise to K. So where is raise to? Raise to K. Okay, so I'm dividing, so I'll just prefer one more bracket on the inside. Again, generally Excel follows the board mass correctly, but whenever I'm doing such divisions, etc., inside a bracket, I generally prefer to have an individual brackets around this. So feel free to add as many brackets as you want, because brackets basically help you direct the way in which your calculations are going to behave. So wherever you're uncertain about something, simply add a couple of brackets and proceed. So that way you can be sure that Excel will do the calculation correctly. Excel is intelligent, I know, but at times it can go wrong. So on a safer side, wherever uncertain, feel free to add more brackets so that your code gets calculated exactly as you want. Okay, I have defined one more variable name, right? TCF coupons, which I can use here. So TCF C. Okay. So this will be TCF coupons plus temp coupon. Okay, so that way this will be like a temporary addition which is happening. So I have a DCF coupon which is like a running counter. So every cash flow which I calculate, it's simply going and sitting inside DCF coupon. So that's why I have this successive addition which I'm doing. So if you see DCF coupons, this is a variable which is getting updated every time. And how it gets updated? Because I have a value which is already sitting inside DCF coupons and I'm adding something on top of it. So that way you can imagine this is like a running counter or a running variable. I'll do a next K. Okay, so this should take care of the cash flows. Now, I think just a couple of more steps to go and we are good. So let's just complete that much and then we'll come back to the code. Okay. So my running sum has happened correctly. Now I can try result of counter equal to. Now I'll have those that CF of face value is also there. Maybe I just have a few brackets which I can use. CF underscore operating. Fine. Okay, so I have this final payment upon. Basically adjusting the formula. So I have that one thing on the left hand side. Okay. Face value, which is the final distance upon this. So guys, I'm basically visualizing that formula and simply rearranging it so that I have that Z 1.5 on one side. Okay. Minus all of the earlier coupons which I've calculated. So DCF close the bracket raised to, and I have Z 1.5. So that's raised to power 3. So when I move it to the other side, that power 3 becomes 1/3. Okay, so 1 by counter. Maybe I can have just one bracket around. So this should handle the 1 by counter. Okay, minus 1. As we just check the brackets, I think I've written the brackets correctly. If something is wrong, we'll see if we get some arbit values, but let me just go through the brackets once. So fine. So CF face value, which is 102.5 upon so I have 100 on the left. I have the first two coupons which I calculate. I move it to the left. So I have, so that's why I have this counter minus DCF coupons. This will be raised to 1 by counter minus 1. I think this looks okay. Let's see. If it throws any error, we'll see. But for now, this
Sir,
looks
I
okay.
don't think so. If you look at the rightmost, I think there's an extra bracket.
Is it? Okay. It didn't throw
No, sir,
any
no, sir.
errors actually.
It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine.
Okay. Otherwise, Excel generally throws an error. But okay. I mean, we'll see. So let me just. All right. Even if I don't indent that, that's absolutely fine. So I've simply removed the indenture so that we have the entire thing in one line. I have a temp index equal to temp index plus 1, which I want to increment with every run. Okay. Once I do this, anything else which I need to do? So my temp index has got updated now. I'll also need to move this to my output, right? Also, before I go there, what I can actually do is I can reset a certain temporary variable, because the thing is I'll be using this thing recursively period over period, right? So the same variable names are going to be used every time. So what I do for Z 1.5, That same idea I'm going to apply for Z2 as well. Only thing is we have one additional period. So maybe what I can do is the variables or the temporary variables which I'm using, I'll just reset them to 0. Otherwise, those variables will carry the values ahead, which are not required. So after this, I can have my CF face value equal to 0. I'm simply resetting it to 0. Temporary coupon, also I'm resetting to 0. DCF coupons, also I'm resetting to 0. So that I'm simply flushing out whatever values are there inside this before I go to the next period. So that's the idea. So this I can indent. Of course, indenting is not required, but just for better visibility, I have an end if here. I'll require a next J. Okay. Also, I'll need to output the result as well. So outputting the result of the UDF. Let's see how that is done. What's the name? It is zero rates. Z and R capital. So zero rates equal to result. And end function is already there. So let me hit a few backspaces to get the end function above. Okay. So let's try to run this once directly. If something goes wrong, we'll see this. So I'll just comment out the sub for the moment. Let's run this. So we'll run this and we'll come back. If there are any errors, we'll see what is to be done. Okay. By the way, save these files, guys, because we have written a lot of things and Excel at times can behave weirdly.
Scroll down for a second.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Yeah, I'll just scroll down. I think this looks okay. If throws some weird results, we'll see what is to be done. Then we can debug. Then I show you how to call this function as well as a part of our Excel file or Excel spreadsheet, I would say.
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay, okay. So I'll just switch
Just
back.
one request.
Yes,
If you could just copy the entire text that you have and
Mhm.
just put it in the chat box.
Sure, sure. Yeah. I think I'll just need to switch back to Excel. So I think I'll just need to, because that Excel by itself doesn't switch to the spreadsheet. So now I want to call the function here. So what I do is I select this entire range. So simply press shift and select those many rows. Say equals zero rates. So now if you see that zero rates is populating something which we have created. So zero rates and pass these things as inputs. So close the bracket and then press Control Shift Enter. Okay, so some problem. Let's see what the problem is. So let me just zoom. It's already zoomed in, is it? Okay, so we are getting some error. We'll see what the error is. So let's go back. So ideally, this should have got populated, but maybe something might be off. but something which you can figure out. So let me go back to the to our working. We can do a quick visual check if something is amiss. If not, then if we can't really spot the error there, then basically we are allowed to do some debugging. But hopefully it will not be something which is very this thing. So that way it's a pretty straightforward logic. So everything up till C input was correct. We had checked the debugging here. So let's see. So S1, S2 we haven't really required, but this is something which I can use for my implied forwards. So fine.
Sir, in Excel,
Mhm.
when we write zero rates and it shows up, then the bracket is empty. Like usually in a normal Excel formula, it gives us a prompt what to fill. But out here, there's no prompt in which order we should fill things. Maybe that is
Uh,
something we haven't addressed.
so here actually we are not accepting the user input as such. Now we are simply passing in. So if you compare this with something which we did for Fibonacci, so for that Fibonacci sequence, we had actually asked the user to enter a value, but here we are not really doing that, right? Here we are simply selecting a certain set of rows, and that becomes the input. But Excel will understand, or VBA will understand what those rows mean, because that's how we have coded that. Yeah, so that's why we don't have a separate message box as such here. We are not accepting separate user inputs as such.
But sir, my main doubt is how will the computer understand which is the interest rate, which is the coupon rate, or which is
That's what we are trying to do through this thing. So if you see this C4 comma counter, 3 comma counter, etc., this
all
is how we
right,
are communicating it to them.
all
So
right,
maybe
sir.
we can do some visual check first. If not, we'll do some debugging. Okay, let's do some basic debugging. Before that, maybe quickly checking this should be fine. Might as well. Let's do a simple debug to see if things are working. I'll just reactivate the sub procedure. I'll just change the breakpoint because the first few things are already checked, right? I don't need to again check those things. So I can keep it here. Something called as a run to cursor also, right? Run to cursor. So let me see if the first two rates are getting populated correctly. If yes, then the first if condition is working right. So I just scroll down. Where is the result? Yeah, result is here. Yeah. So the first 3 and 4%, which is correct. Now this is working fine. Now let's see why it's not populating the third rate. At 5.03 should populate here. So let's see at which point it's throwing an error. Coupon, is it calculating 2.5? Yeah. So coupon is also getting calculated. Face value plus coupon, this should be 102.5. Why is it taking 2.55? 4 comma counter. 1, 2. Okay. This should be 3 comma counter. Just a second. This should be 3 comma counter. Now, let me just start the debugging once. I'll just come to this point now. Because the first two periods are fine, right? I don't need to debug them once again. Just run to cursor. This can go. Oops. Stop debugging this. So how do you run to cursor? Control F8. Okay. So I need a function also, control function effect. Okay. First two period I didn't work calculated. Now the coupon is 2.5. Now see if this should be 102.5. Okay. Now let's see. Maybe this could. So maybe let's step through anyway. We are anyways here, right? My temp coupon should keep on getting updated. So if I just scroll down this watch window. Okay, so temp coupons are getting updated. Okay, so what is there in the result now? Oh, good. So now this is coming as 5.03. So hopefully when we run this thing, it should work fine as well. So earlier, I think the problem was I had missed on the index. I had mistakenly kept this as 4 comma counter. But my actual face value is appearing in row number 3, right? So it should be 3. It should not be 4. So maybe let me just go back to Excel for a moment and see if I get the output. So I'll just delete the formula. I'll say 0 rates. Select this thing. I just need to stop debugging. I think without that, it will not allow me to run. As I'm just doing something in my Excel spreadsheet, I'm just seeing if it's working fine. If it does, I'll share screen. Okay, so it's working. So let me go back. So I think that was the problem in our code. So if I switch my window. So what I've done is I simply select this one, or maybe I just delete this and I do it again. So I want to populate my 0 rates here. I select this row. I say equal to 0 rates. I select my entire input, close the bracket and press Control Shift Enter. And this gives me my spot rates. Now these should tally with our earlier calculation because 5.03 I recorrect 5.5 as well. So maybe if I just reduce the number of decimals, it will exactly tally. So this is my spot rate yield, or what we call as a term structure of rates. So these are my term structure of rates.
Sir, could you just show what exactly you did on the Excel sheet out here?
Yeah.
You
So
wrote 0 rates and then?
So I say I select this much range. So imagine that. Okay. So let me just delete this. I select all the rows which I want to populate. Oh, sorry, all the columns. It's just one row, those many columns. I say equal to. I write my function name, 0 rates. I select inputs. So the first 4 rows are my inputs. I close the bracket and then don't press enter. Press Control Shift Enter together. That way, these curly brackets represent an array output. These are automatically created by Excel. I don't do it manually. So if you see the formula here, you'll have a curly bracket. So that has come in automatically because this is an array-like output.
But in terms of bugging, there was only that the 3 which had to become 4, right? Was there
Yes.
anything else?
Yeah, and that was the only problem. So after that, we
Okay.
started getting the result. Yeah.
So because now when I'm pressing Control Shift Enter again, that VBA is opening. So should I close
Correct.
the VBA?
So, no. So don't close VBA. What you can do is you can remove those breakpoints so that red dots.
Oh, okay.
And you can stop debugging and then run this thing. Otherwise, it will the moment it sees breakpoint, it will immediately go into debug. It will feel that we are trying to debug something.
It's saying something like cannot save while debugging. So I have no idea what I'm supposed to do. Just
Okay,
press
so
F8.
so can you do this? So maybe can you send me your file? I can quickly check that out and email it back.
So we can do it right now at the end of the class. We can do this maybe next time.
Sure, no problem.
Yes, sir. Even I can't like when I'm doing writing the code, so I can get the I'm getting the zero value, not the value
Okay.
you are getting.
Okay, all right. So no problem. So maybe what I could request is maybe if you guys can email your file to me, I can quickly have a look, and if there are any bugs there, I can quickly just fix that and email it back to you. So if you email it on my personal ID, I can on my personal ID or even on this GIP ID should be fine.
Yes, sir. But sir, can you just please tell the after changing the value that from 4 to 3, do we need to do anything else?
Not really, nothing else. Now, only thing is I've changed the indexing because earlier what was happening is I was mistakenly indexing that to coupon rate, but my final cash flow should have the face value component, which was not getting calculated. Since I had used C4 comma counter, it was using rates. But when I calculate my final face value, I need to use this counter number 3. So that's the only change which I did.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So maybe a couple of you who have a problem, you can definitely email across your file. I can quickly check out. Not a problem. So I can check it later on. So and I can let you know in a couple of days. Okay. All right. So again, before we go, we'll quickly take attendance for today. So that way, I mean, so this can be, so you can imagine this is like a model which you have developed right now. So this is like a model for building spot rates. So now tomorrow, if you have any yield curve which gets, which is given to you, you can directly use it for your calculation purposes. So you have a ready calculator now. So in case you happen to join a fixed incomes desk or maybe even a front office which is focusing on bonds or bond-like products or even risk analytics, that is where this calculator can come handy. And now you know the logic, so now you can build other calculators accordingly. Or maybe what you could also try is you can try it through simple scripting also, because you know the logic. You can just convert this into a scripting tool also, something in Python or R, whichever you like. So that way it will be more of practice which you guys can do. So maybe what I could do is I'll just keep my window shared. So I'll keep that code window shared. In the meantime, I'll take attendance. So you guys can generally browse through the code in case you have missed something. So let me just open the code window also. Yeah. I just minimize the zooming so that there are more things which are visible in small in one screen. So I go to tools, options, editor, size. I just reduce the size to 14. Just scroll up a bit. Okay, so the entire working model is there. So let me share that part. And in the meantime, in the background, I'll just take attendance. So those of you who are getting any syntactical issues, etc., you can quickly check that out as well. So I'll leave this as it is right now, and I'll continue with my attendance. Okay, so the financial economics class. Akash Singh is present. Achal Jain is present. Ayush Bhushal.
Present, sir.
Adesha Hati. Tejas.
Present, sir.
Okay, Ali is present. Anjali Garg. Anmol Seth. Arispita Deka. Avni Mishra. Ayushi is present. Sarvesh Bagal.
Present.
Bhavya Dan. Hari Chabra.
Present, sir.
Dipansha Chauhan is present. Dipansha Singh, my mistake. Dipansha Singh and Diksha Chauhan both are present.
Yes, sir.
Gaurav Kadam is present as well.
Yes, sir, present.
Okay. Gaurav Datir.
Present, sir.
Okay. Himanshu Verma is present. Jaideep Saini.
Present, sir.
Okay. K. Ayushi is present. Riya Shukla.
So she's present. There's a network issue in the hostel.
Okay. Okay. All right. Kriti Marwa is present. Mansi Singhal.
So she's also present.
Okay. Okay. Mansimran Arora.
Present, sir.
Okay. Manvi is present. Mihir is present. Muskan Garg. Namrata Gaur. Neil is present. Nikhil Agarwal.
Present, sir.
Prasul Sharma. Pratik Maheshwari.
Present, sir.
Okay. Rashid Tyagi. Rahul Ghosh.
Present, sir.
Rahul Giri. Rahul Goswami. Rajaditya Singh.
Present, sir.
Rashi Jain is present. Rishabh Kothari.
Present, sir.
Ruma Keshri.
Present, sir.
Sahaj Manocha. Samiksha Chopra. Sharanya is present. Shubham Jain is present. Shubham Kumar. Someshwar Verma. Stuti Mehrotra.
Present, sir.
Sanika Thakur.
Present, sir.
Vinaya Pawar. Financial economics is done. We'll go to international business. So if financial economics, guys, if you have a commitment after this, you can leave. And I'll see you guys tomorrow evening, 4:30 to 6:30. So I'll just take the attendance for IB and we'll stop.
Sir, I wanted to know one thing. Like we have periodical from 4th, so have you decided on the syllabus for the same?
Yeah, I mean, I just received an email from the institute yesterday. So let me give it a thought again. I'll let you guys know maybe tomorrow or so.
Sure, sir. Thank you.
So I'll take the attendance for IB now. Ayush is present. Alisha Gupta. So I'll just read out a few names. Those of you who are present, you can just tell me as present. Alisha Gupta, Vidhi, Anant Jain, Anish Topeshwarkar. Anjali Sethi is present. Okay. Arshada Imam. Barkha Israni. Bhavya Patel, Saloni, Chaitra Tirodkar. Devam Pandey is present.
Present.
Diksha Kalra, Gauraja is present. Gayatri Narkede, Govind Mittal. Sawan is present as well. Sawan is absent. Himanshi is present.
Savan present, sir.
Okay, so Sawan and Himanshi are present. Indu is absent. Ishita Saxena, Kanika Goyal, Karthik Mittal, Kasro L. Lakshay?
Present, sir.
Okay. Mahi Rajawat, Mansi Gupta, Mathangi Warrior, Megha Parak, Nancy Halawat, Neha Jain, Pratiksha Pradhan, Rohan Bagai, Rohit Poddar, Samida Malik, Shivangi Senwal, Simran Pahuja is present. Srishti Verma? Okay. Tanu Goyal, Tarang Kadyan, Kalyani Todkari, Twinkle Karnawat, Vaishnavi, Vanishka Jain, Vibhor? Okay, Vidushi Rana is present. Yash Mehra? All right. Great. So thank you so much. Thanks for joining in today. And I'll see you guys tomorrow evening. And we'll take our discussion ahead. And those of you who are getting issues in your file, you can just email it to me. I can quickly go through them and I'll just let you know wherever you have missed out something.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you and have a nice day. Take care. Bye-bye.
So could we also have your file for reference?
Yeah, I could do that. Yes, I can email it to you. Yes.
Thank you, sir.